Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Elliot. We're going to get into right that question. I heard someone say why. That's great. Why? We're going to get right to that question. My name's Elliot. If you don't know me, I generally spend a lot of time with the kids in the back, and so that's often a reason why. But today, we're excited to have you guys here. First things first, happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the room. Fathers are awesome, and we're grateful to have a day to be able to celebrate people who've given so much and give so much. And in good Foundation Church tradition, we're going to do that in the form of a giveaway celebrating Father's awesomeness. So we have here 3 gift cards to Turcotte's Delicatessen, and we're going to have a bit of a war between fathers right now as to who's doing the cooler things. Okay. So this is just for fathers, okay? And whoever gets the highest amount in the categories, they get one of these gift cards. So first things first, which father here has caught the most fish in a day? Okay, very, very biblical question to ask. One of the prophets said that. Do I have 5? Do I have 5 anywhere? Okay, we got a few 5s. Do I have 10? Still got more than that. Okay, do we have 15? Okay, still can see 2 hands. Do I have 20? Still have 2 hands. Do I have 25? Still have 2 hands. 30? 35? 40? Okay, I think I see 40 right here. Okay, with Jimmy. I think that's who I see the winner. That's amazing. Okay, come up to get that, Jimmy. That's fantastic. You have to teach me your ways, okay? I think I'm on 4. So that's amazing. Okay, we've got 2 more categories. We got, next up, who has climbed the highest mountain? Father has climbed the highest mountain, okay? Okay, by elevation, yeah, we're doing this. So, I don't know where I'm going to start here. 5,000 feet? I think, okay, yeah, we got a lot of jokes here. That's probably too low. 10,000 feet. Okay, 14,000 feet. Okay, we still got a bunch of hands. Okay, I see a bunch of hands here. 20,000 feet? Okay, I went way up real quick. 17, 16, 15. Okay, we have 14. Okay, we got 3 people. I think 2 people with 14 there. Okay, so you guys have to go and have lunch together, I think, because I don't know. Okay, why don't you guys come up and pick that, Adam or Bill? I think. So that's still higher than me, so I'm feeling sufficiently beaten at this point. I'm going to be feeling more beaten at the end of this. And I think, okay, well, I'm not going to win this one. Biggest bench press, past or present. Okay, we got a couple of hands. Okay, so what, like 200 pounds? Okay, we got a bunch of 250. 300, 350. 4, oh, nice. We still have a hand. You haven't won yet. 400. Whoa, okay, I think 400. I think that beats it. Okay, so yeah, please come on down. Amazing. What is your record? 420. Wow, amazing. Okay, thank you. Amazing. Okay, good job, Dad. Okay, now I'm feeling sufficiently weak and a bad fisherman. I will continue with the story. So we've been going through a series, why insert the blank. We've done why the Bible, why church, why Christianity. Jake took us through last week. And today we have everyone's favorite subject, why money? Why generosity? Why does following Jesus mean I have to change my money? They gave me one of the easy ones. Peter and Jake were so excited to see a sermon about money and see how everyone would react to it that just yesterday they got on a plane to a remote African country that doesn't have cell service. And so my current plan is, as long as everybody doesn't run out of here and do the same thing at the end, I succeeded. So I know I'm joking. They're on a mission trip, but it was planned long before this. But might as well give them a hard time. So anyway, today we've got why money. Why does following Jesus mean I have to change how I use my money? So first thing I want to do is set the stage. The question's why money, but the thing I want to talk about first is what money. What does following Jesus mean for my money? And I'm going to kind of do an overview. We're going to do some passages in a little bit that go through parts in detail. But in general, when we talk about money, we often use the term stewardship. Stewardship is this concept where we're not really the owner of the things we have. It's our resources, our gifts, our money, but rather we are a manager for the real owner, the real beneficiary, in this case, God. So stewardship is this concept that applies to not more than just money. It applies to essentially everything in our Christian walk, but it's often used a lot to talk about money. Now, there's a couple of aspects of how stewardship affects our use of money. On a very basic level, if I get a paycheck, I should use that to look after the things God's given me. So I shouldn't go and just take my paycheck and gamble it away. I should probably get food and shelter for my family. That's probably very minimum kind of level stewardship entails. But that's not what I'm going to focus on, and it's not really what the Bible focuses on when it talks about this, though the Bible would support what I just said. The Bible consistently focuses on generosity when it talks about money, when it talks about stewardship. And as I said, we're going to go through some specific passages as a general matter, like in the Old Testament, when the Bible commands generosity in a couple of different forms. The tithe, I'm sure you've heard about. It comes from the Old Testament. It comes from one of the laws that God gave at Mount Sinai for the people to come and to bring a tenth of their agricultural produce to the temple to provide for the priests and for the Levites who look after the temple, who didn't have their own agricultural capabilities because their job was taking care of the temple. So there's the tithe. The tithe wasn't the only thing, though, in the Old Testament. There were actually a couple of different tithes. One additional tithe for the poor, people who couldn't support themselves. There was also a series of sacrifices people were supposed to bring, and festivals they were to hold, and meals they were going to give during these festivals, and laws about how you shouldn't reap to the very edge of your field. You should leave some of your produce so people who don't have enough can take some of it yourselves. So people kind of fight about exactly how much that entails, but probably the laws commanded a giving ratio of about 23-ish plus % of people's income in the Old Testament. Moving on to the New Testament, no specific percentage or numbers really mentioned in the New Testament, but what is consistently said, I think to sum it up, is this idea of joyful, abundant generosity. Jesus calls us to joyfully give, and the apostles throughout the Bible call us to joyfully give. And they call us to joyfully give in a variety of different ways to support our church so that our pastors can live through the gospel so that there is no need in our church. If we have several coats and our brother doesn't, we should give. It also talks about providing for the worldwide church, the family of believers, that people don't have lack when we have surplus. And it also talks about being generous and giving to just take care of needs that you see in society. So that's a lot of giving that I just talked about. It's very countercultural. It's hard. I can say that from personal experience. It's hard, and I've been looking at statistics on giving when I was preparing for this, and I can tell it's hard. It's not something that people find natural. So that being the what, that kind of leads us into the actual question that I'm supposed to be doing. Why? Why money? Why this very counterintuitive and countercultural command to joyfully give our stuff away? That seems odd to us. So I've got 4 reasons. Seeing as the head pastor's out, I broke the rule. You can only have 3 points in a sermon. I have 4. But I have 4 points. And so we're going to go jump into the first point right now that I think is the first thing I wanted to talk about. Why money? Because God is a giver who gave us everything. That's the first point I want to talk through. What do I mean by this? God is a giver who gave us everything. When we look at the biblical story, it starts with generosity. The chaotic nothingness of the second verse of the Bible didn't do anything to earn being turned into a wonderful world that we live in. We humans did not do anything to earn existing. We didn't exist. So it's hard to earn things when you're not even there. So God creates. He creates a beautiful world. He creates a world good for us, and he creates us, and he puts us in charge to run it under his guidance and supervision. It's a gift. All of that is a gift. Nobody earned it. pretty much immediately, humanity rebels and says, enough of that, we're going to do our own thing. And again, God gives us a gift. The word grace and the word gift in Greek are actually the same word. And he gives us grace. He doesn't just hit the reset button, but instead, he continues a mission to bless us in spite of the fact we rebel against him. And the whole story of the Bible, somewhat, is this story of God coming with this mission to bless us in spite of ourselves. And it all culminates in God sending Jesus. And he sends himself in human form to come, to live a perfect life, and to die on our behalf, to pay off this huge debt to sin, in sin that we created for ourselves. And this is a gift. In fact, one of the most famous passages there is, not everyone's necessarily, but a lot of people's favorite, John 3:16 says this: "For this is the way God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but will have eternal life." God's generosity is written throughout the Bible, from the beginning through our salvation to the end. Everything is a gift. And God loves us even in spite of the fact we're in constant rebellion that he gives. And then ultimately, like taking a step back from the Bible and just thinking about life, I was thinking about this. Everything I really have is a gift. Like, I work hard in my job. It was a long day yesterday, my wife can attest. And throughout the week, it's been difficult. But, if I'm being honest, like, I have so little control over how much I have. I was born to middle-class parents that were generous and good parents in a country that's pretty affluent, and I got a bunch of good opportunities, several of which came out of nowhere, for schooling and for my current job. I had no control over any of those things, really. I worked hard, yes, but we know people who work hard, they don't get those opportunities, and they don't have. And so ultimately, everything we have is a gift. And I think this should help us kind of think about things maybe a little differently. You see, the DNA of the universe, when we look at it this way, the DNA of everything God's done is God giving and generosity running through it. And we were created to image God. We were created in the image of God. And this God is a generous God. And so what would it mean to image God? Well, probably to have some aspect of that generosity flowing through ourselves as well, right? And it's not like God just stands there commanding generosity. He actually lives in it. And so I think looking at this reality can help us see things with generosity better. The example I want to give, and help propel us to generosity, the example I want to give is from 1 Chronicles 29. It's a cool passage. I know it's everyone's favorite book, Chronicles. I bet you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the 1 Chronicles 29, I'm not going to read it all, but King David is giving gifts to the temple. Solomon, his son, is going to build this temple. It's going to be an amazing temple to God. But David isn't going to build it, but he wants to provide for it. And he kind of recounts the things he's already given to it, and then he gives this new gift to the temple. And as I said, I'm not going to read it. It's basically the GDP of a small country when you calculate it in modern dollars. So he gives this GDP of a small country to the temple, and he does it joyfully. And then all the other leaders of Israel kind of see this happening, and they're like, we want in on that. And they themselves kind of pull together, and they give the GDP of another small country to the temple. And it says that they're all rejoicing and praising God. And in the part I'm going to read, this is David's speech that he was giving during that time. And this is what he said about why he gave. "But who am I? And who are my people?" This is David speaking. "That we should be in a position to contribute this much. Indeed, everything comes from you, and we have simply given back to you what is yours. For we are resident foreigners and nomads in your presence, like all our ancestors. Our days are like a shadow on the earth without security. O Lord our God, all this wealth which we have collected to build a temple for you, to honor your holy name, it comes from you. It all belongs to you." So I think there we see that when we think about things and we realize, like, King David was a king, right? He was politically shrewd. He was a very shrewd person. He was a very good fighter. He fought for where he was. If anyone could think he had earned everything himself, King David's one of those people. But he doesn't think about it that way. He doesn't think, oh, what a great guy I am. He thinks, God, you've given me everything. I'm going to give back to you. And that propels generosity. So that's one way of thinking about why money that I want to talk about. Moving on to our second point. I want to say, why money? Why generosity? Because it's for God's glory. What do I mean by that? Well, like I said, we're made to image God, and one aspect of that is to represent Him in the world. In Matthew 5:16, Jesus says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. We should be, part of our walk is to glorify God by doing good deeds, so that we glorify Him. Not so we glorify ourselves, Jesus is very clear there, but so we glorify Him. And giving can be a part of that. I want to give a brief example. I was looking at statistics when I was putting this together of how that could go about. Well, in the world, from as long as I can remember, there's this thing like this clean water crisis. There isn't clean water for a lot of people. 800 million people in the world, it's about 10% of the world population, don't have ready, available access to clean water. The average rural African woman has to walk 4 miles carrying 40 pounds of jars of water to give water to her family every day. In the same time, in the U.S., the richest country in the world, church-going Christians, 95% do not give 10% or more of their income to charity. Only about 3 to 5% do. People kind of calculate stuff, and they fight about how much it all adds up to, but taking pretty conservative estimates, if U.S. church-going Christians, just in the U.S., gave 10% of their income to charity, every year it would likely generate enough money to completely fix the clean water crisis in the world, right? And I think that'd just be amazing, right? If we woke up one day and we turned on the television and it's like, oh, there was this intractable problem that people have had no clue how to fix for decades, and just all of a sudden, people, to glorify Jesus, fixed it, and in love of other people. I think that'd be cool. And I think that's just one example. We don't have to fix the clean water crisis to glorify God in our giving. We can give to much smaller things and fix much smaller things in His name, and that's glorifying Him. So that's point 2. Why money? Because it's for God's glory. Point 3. Moving faster because my first point I spent too long on. So point 3, why money? Because money can't give us what we want. I want to read a passage that always convicts me whenever I read it, and was convicting me while I was writing this sermon. So it's Luke 12:15 through 21. Okay. And this is Jesus, and it says, He said to them, and Jesus said to them, take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And He told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns. I will build larger barns, and there I will store all my grain and all my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasures for himself and does not rich towards God. Okay, that's Luke 12:15. I think a few things stand out to me in this passage. And like I said, this point is money can't give us what we want. What's this rich man doing? When you read it, he's really doing nothing wrong as we think about things. I think he's a successful farmer. He's farming. He's doing great. He's living his Israelite dream. He's storing. He's producing a lot. And what does he think to himself? You know what? I'm just going to build a bigger barn to put it all in. And what does he say to himself? He says to himself, has this internal dialogue with his soul, a little odd maybe, but nothing too crazy. And he says to himself, soul, you can chill. Like we're set now. You can just enjoy. And obviously things don't end all that well in this parable for the rich man. And God comes and he says to him, what does he say? He says, fool. Okay. And preparing this sermon, it was that word that kind of stood out to me. He doesn't say, you wicked person. He doesn't say, you evil person. He doesn't say, you greedy person even. He says, you fool. The point seems to be not that he is evil or wicked or greedy. It's that he didn't really think things through. He looked to money to give him security. He looked to money to give him enjoyment. And ultimately, this money gave him literally nothing. He died the day after he said, or they that he says to himself all this stuff. He was looking for money to give him something that he couldn't give him. He couldn't get security from it. And so what I think this passage is calling us to, in part, is instead of trying to depend on and have our security in money, to depend on and have our security in God, because God's the only person who can give us that, truly. Money can't. See the stock market this year, right, or inflation, or whatever. It isn't very stable. And there's been much more instability in the past. And so money can't give us what we want. We want security and enjoyment. God can. So that's reason 3. Reason 4, final reason, why money? Because generosity unlocks true life, according to the Bible. Our final passage is 1 Timothy 6. This is a letter by the Apostle Paul to Timothy, who is a church leader, probably in the city of Ephesus, which was, I think, the 4th largest city in the Roman Empire, extremely rich. All the goods that went to the eastern side of the Roman Empire probably went through Ephesus at some point. You could get anything you wanted to in Ephesus. It was a rich town in the scheme of things. And so it's perhaps has some similarities to where we live. And he's writing to Timothy, and he's talking to Timothy about a lot of things, about how he should run his church. And this is very near the end of the letter, and is summing up of various things. And Paul says to Timothy, "As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life." So they may take hold of that which is truly life. So in this passage in 1 Timothy 6, again, I think there's a couple of interesting things there. Paul tells Timothy to go and tell people who are rich in this present age, and when compared to people in the Roman Empire at the time, that would tend to incorporate most of us. We are better off than a lot of people in the Roman Empire, just as a matter of modern conveniences and all sorts of things. He tells them to be rich in the present age, and he says, in verse 18, he says, essentially, he uses 4 different words, but it essentially is, tell them to be generous, to be generous, to be generous, and to be generous. He uses 4 different words to convey the point, but that's kind of what he's saying. But why does he say that? He doesn't say, like, otherwise they're evil, wicked people, or otherwise they're really greedy people. He says so that they can take hold of true life. That's what it says right at the end of verse 19. So the rich people can take hold of true life. And what does this mean? Well, the word in Greek is kind of has this connotation of there's counterfeit life over here, which seems to be in the hoarding of possessions, and there's true life. And they wanted to get the true life. And what does that mean? Well, I think a couple of things. I think in summing that up, one of the things is kind of an experience, right? Like I tend to be a spender more than a saver. I like getting nice things, and I like getting, good end of things. It sometimes leads to conflict with, but that's a whole other story. And I like to get new things, and in my life, I've spent money on new cool things that seem cool, and I buy them. And, they're really cool for a day, and then the second day, they're really cool, and then the third day, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then they're like, a week or two passed, and oh yeah, I have that, but what's my next thing I'm going to buy? They end up giving enjoyment for like a day, and they tend to be a bit like that idea of counterfeit life, right? They think I'm going to get life by having these cool things, and then it ends up being something I forget about and have in the closet somewhere until my wife makes me throw it out. Again, different story, but you're great, babe. The idea here, though, is if we're generous, that we're instead of doing that, we're unlocking something else, something better. And, I think that's counterintuitive for us, but, as I say, in researching this, I've watched a lot of stories of people who are generous, and I've looked up surveys, and people, do studies of this, secular studies, that people who are more generous are happier. And it makes sense, right? Because going back to our first point, I'm not actually going to go back to it because I spent already too long on it, but going back to the first point, generosity is written into the universe, right? Generosity is written into who we are and who God is and who God wants us to be. And so when we are generous, it's counterintuitive, it's upside down, like much of Jesus' kingdom, but it blesses us by unlocking true life, and it brings God's kingdom more to bear in the world. And that is amazing. When we step out in faith in something that doesn't feel right to us, God tends to show up, and I think he does show up with generosity throughout the Bible. And so I think that's my fourth point. Why money? Because it unlocks true life, according to Paul, according to the Bible. So there are my 4 points. They're everything I wanted to cover. I just want to then kind of talk about right at the end here, how should we respond to this? How should we think about this message? And I think there's kind of two things. If you're not a Christian and you're listening, and if you're listening online or if you're here, I think now is maybe not the time to think about how can I give. Maybe now is the time to think about how can I accept the gift God's set up for me. How can I accept what Jesus has done to pay off my debt to sin, to bring me to new life and to blessing? If you are a Christian and you're here, you already follow Christ, then I think let's look at these things. Let's pray on them, and let's maybe ask ourselves a question: Are we storing up our treasures? Are we building new and bigger barns in this life to store our treasures? Right? Are we just thinking about how we can get this enjoyment through the ever larger accumulation of things, or get security through that? Or are we believing in the certainty of God, believing in the security God can give us, so as to store up our treasures in heaven, so to store up our treasures with God, and not just that, but in the now, in faith in Jesus, grab onto the life that the Bible says is true life by being generous. That's not a command that God hasn't lived out himself, and it's not a command that we should just obey. It's an opportunity to really grab onto that life that God intended for us in the first place. And as our church's current sign-off now is to live on mission. So let's think about how we can live on mission with our finances in that way, so as to unlock that true life. So I'm just going to quickly pray, and the band will come up, and we'll close this out. But let's pray.